Welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ daily news television show, broadcasting live and available on demand on your favorite streaming channels. Analytics company vidIQ has certified the Queer News Tonight YouTube channel as the world's most popular LGBTQ streaming news show. Our queer stories have reached over 10 million views.
We are proud that Queer News Tonight has more YouTube subscribers than any other LGBTQ brand in Florida. And now we've hit an incredible milestone, 24,000 subscribers and counting. Thank you for making us a trusted voice in queer news. We thank you for watching and supporting our voice in the LGBTQ community. There is no other news program in the LGBTQ world like Queer News Tonight.
It is Thursday, July 17th. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we will tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
You're watching Queer News Tonight, the world's first daily LGBTQ evening news show.
Welcome to the world's most important LGBTQ evening news show. Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same model as PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ community. Our nonprofit mission is to support the 11 pillars of our LGBTQ community. We want to inform and educate on the key issues of lesbian, trans, Latino, Black, healthcare, seniors, students, faith, social justice, business, and queer culture. Help us support our diverse community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ nonprofit media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network. In 2025, our magazine is celebrating 40 years of the LGBTQ experience, and Queer News Tonight is celebrating our 5th anniversary with more than 10,000 LGBTQ television stories. We present Pride Fete in August, and we declare that love is in the air with Pride Fort Lauderdale on Valentine's Day, February 14th. Our magazine, events, and television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ and broader community.
In 2025, more than 100 community leaders will sit at this table and share their voices as our anchors. Together, we host this show to support the LGBTQ community. Let's meet this evening's anchors at Queer News Tonight. Let's welcome anchor Larry Farver. Larry has over 20 years of experience in human resources, acting, film, radio, TV, live events, parade float design, production, and casting. He is also a board member of the West Side Association. Larry, storm season town hall to offer life-saving tips on July 22nd. Tell me, what's happening now?
Sure, Rex. On Tuesday, July 22nd, from 7 to 8 p.m., South Florida PBS will host a free virtual town hall focused on storm season safety, titled Storm Season Safety, Hurricane Water and Fire Danger. The online event will help viewers prepare for Florida's most unpredictable natural threats, hurricanes, water hazards, and fire dangers. The town hall will feature a panel of experts sharing practical, possibly life-saving advice. Olga Villaverde will moderate with the discussion, including panelists, which include Madeline Camejo of Baptist Health, swim safety advocate Casey McGovern, and Jim Hines from the Palm Beach Fire Rescue. This 1-hour live session will stream on the Health Channel, allhealthtv.com, Town Hall, and All Health Go's YouTube and Facebook pages. Viewers will have the opportunity to email their questions in advance to questions@allhealthtv.com. Residents across South Florida are encouraged to tune in and learn how to stay safe before, during, and after a storm. Well, I think it's really important. You know, I've been a transplant from the greater New York area, almost 6 years going on the end of the summer. And with some of the cuts with the National Weather Service, especially what we unfortunately saw in Texas with the tragedies there, I think it's really important to not assume we know what's going to happen. I think I've been exposed to a few tropical storms, and you think you're on high ground. I live in Wilton Manors, suburb here in Fort Lauderdale, and it was shocking when water was actually penetrating up through my floor. My garage is about a foot below my house, and then I watched the water go up to the tires on my car in my circular driveway, and it was 4 inches above that. And I said, my gosh, and it was storm sewers backing up. It wasn't the rivers or canals. So a lot of things happening. I know some folks in Edgewood in our community here in Fort Lauderdale, including some seniors who were displaced temporarily. So it's really important to be safe and, have an understanding and be prepared in advance.
I think it's really important. I mean, I'm a person who's grown up in the South, has lived through hurricanes, but, people used to make fun of me because I have, the solar powered battery to be able to charge my phone. I know how to barbecue in case I lose power, those types of things. It's better to be prepared and not have to use it than not be prepared and be stuck in a life-threatening situation. So, events like this are very important. You brought up a huge point, with all the funding cuts and everything that's been happening, you're really going to have to rely on yourself, and you really should rely on yourself. You shouldn't always, be out there saying, oh, someone's going to save me, because you never know where you're going to be and at what time. So, things like this are really important for the community, and it's very simple. You can just sit there, watch the situation happen on the TV. You don't have to really be involved, but you can be educated, and I think education is really a key point
especially with all the people coming into Florida.
Yeah.
There's so many people from other states that don't understand and they fear it, but it is about knowledge. It is about preparation. It is about hearing about the community resources and just making sure there's a plan. So we need to support these programs as much as we possibly can here in Florida.
Some of my earliest memories as a 5-year-old were Hurricane Andrew. I was living in Miramar in South Broward. That was one of the scariest events of my life, and it was one of my earliest memories. It was like a freight train going through my backyard.
Wow.
We had an above-ground swimming pool, and we had a big oak tree that went right through it, destroyed the whole above-ground pool, flooded out almost our entire kitchen. It was very scary, and what's going on with the federal government, with the cuts to FEMA, with the way that emergencies are now going to be handled with the government. It really is important that we do things for ourselves. So this is a really great opportunity to educate ourselves and to know what's going to happen in the case of an emergency.
I agree, and having worked a lot in healthcare, especially when I landed here 5 or 6 years ago, I worked for a university in Miami, and we were all on deck, and I said, what's this all about? But, you get educated and you learn quickly, and, times have changed. They had the great hurricane, I think, of 1925, which wiped out portions of
Well, I wasn't here for that. I'm not that old.
Me neither.
1992.
I wasn't there either.
I was born in 87.
Yeah, but, again, with the cuts, I think it's also, we can't, you look at what's happened out in the Gulf in the past, and it's scary. Some people wait till the last minute.
Yeah.
So again, just to be mindful, it's more being prepared. I don't see the snowstorms and ice storms that I used to see up north, and that's a good thing. But, I've been trying to educate myself. I think the best thing is just making sure you have backups. I think, Rex, you mentioned you have some solar powered things, because there's also the aftermath. Following the storm, you can have sunny days, but I've heard stories from my neighbors about no power for 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Longer.
And I have to do some things. I either have to move my charcoal grills and charcoal supply in my shed, because my shed has slowly started sinking in the backyard in a lower place.
Right.
And there was 8 inches of water the last time we had a tropical storm. So everything's up high, but if you can't get into your resources, so it's all about planning.
Absolutely. You better have a plan. And Queer News Tonight looks forward to seeing you at Storm Season Online Town Hall on July 22nd. That is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight. Lifelong Floridian, Broward County teacher, community volunteer and leader, and on the board of directors of the Dolphin Democrats. Brian, Save LGBTQ Sunset Mixer to spotlight next-gen LGBTQ plus changemakers is on July 25th. Tell me, what's happening out?
Well, on Friday, July 25th at 6:30 p.m., South Florida's queer community is going to gather for Save Generations event. It's a vibrant sunset mixer hosted at Twisted Tonic. It's organized by Save. This event promises to bring together emerging leaders, advocates, and allies for an evening of connection and purpose. Guests will enjoy a complimentary welcome drink and happy hour specials, but the true highlight will be the chance to engage with over a dozen youth-led and youth-focused queer organizations. From new activists to seasoned organizers, attendees will discover fresh ways to get involved in the ongoing fight for equity and pride. The Sunset Mixer aims to foster community and uplift the next generation of changemakers, shaping South Florida's queer future. Whether you're just starting out or deep in the movement, this is your moment to mix, mingle, and make an impact. More details at save.lgbt.
I'm really excited about this. I think it's great that the community comes together with so many different generations to really teach, different perspectives and really engage the youth to understand what someone like I went through, much older than, some of the youth and who's going to lead our future. So I'm really excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, and I agree. Having come out in the late 80s, in the New York area, I was part of the fight and had a lot of mentors. And I think over time, we in my community in the North, we got complacent. And then I came down here and saw things reversing. So we've talked on the show in the past about how important it is to develop new leadership, not, just cultivating existing leaders, but develop new folks, especially our youth.
And it's important now more than ever with the Trump administration, with what's going on with our federal government, with our local government, with what's happening, at the state level, at the local level. Broward County is a blue dot in a sea of red. And just what's going on in terms of culturally, we're really having the tide is rolling back. So like what you say, that people become complacent. I think there's really no more space for complacency. We really need to start nurturing that newer generation. I'm no longer part of that new generation anymore. I'm almost 40. So compared to some people, I'm young. But
you're a baby.
But compared to others, well, thank you. I'll take it. But
I'll take 40.
But compared to others, I'm not the youngest kid on the block anymore. So we need to start bringing those people up and start hearing their experiences and, really nurturing their leadership potentials.
But it's exciting.
Yeah.
I belong to a group outside in a New Jersey suburb outside of New York. And there was a time where in-person groups were needed. And through the internet and everything, our community developed. But now that we've gone back politically, it's so great that you're doing something in person. People need to have that in-person experience. I think, you can't substitute that for the internet.
No,
well, not only that, but just to remember, because when you're in your 40s and 50s and beyond, you were in a time where homophobia was at an all-time high. And people forget that. People who are in their 20s, they don't have that line of sight. So in order to be able to communicate and let those things not be forgotten so that we can stay the course, make sure that there's equality, make sure that people get the resources that they need to live their best lives. That's important.
Well, and I think, we have to look at, this is highlighting young, upcoming leaders.
Right.
So I think as much as they need to learn from the older generation, I think it's also the reverse. The older generation does need to listen to the younger generation because they are facing new challenges that we don't necessarily understand as an older generation. We have this generation, yourself 40 and myself 50, we were in that kind of in between, right? Where we were coming out of the 80s and 90s and we were in the process of the computer age and we were becoming more open to information that, the older generation didn't have. And now we have a generation that's flooded with information and they're tackling new. So I love the fact that we're doing a specific event for younger people so that they can tell their stories and that maybe us as some of the older generation can actually listen and maybe help them navigate some of these new obstacles that they're dealing with.
And they're bringing a new energy. They're bringing a certain joy. It's not all about struggle.
Yes.
When I was younger, in the mid 90s, early 2000s, the worst thing you could be was gay. The worst insult you could call somebody was gay or faggot or, you name it. Anything related to somebody being gay was the worst thing. These kids, you call somebody gay now, they don't even blink. They don't think it's,
exactly.
They think it's funny. They think it's nothing. You have, kids in school, they don't have the same hang-ups anymore that, kids in my cohort, did. And I think that that's really progress. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do with their skills and talents and treasures.
I got to tell you, my show that we'll be talking about later, Our Family Pride, talks about that.
Oh, great.
What it was like in the 80s and 90s to grow up in a very homophobic world where even before I knew what gay was, I knew it was something to be feared and something to, that it was an abomination. And it was very hard. It's very difficult to see that. And then when I see people who are in their teens today, being gay is the most popular people in the school.
Yeah.
So they don't even have that line of sight of what it was like to hit that brick wall and to be so hated
That was the worst thing, it's like I had such a supportive family, but it was such an internalized homophobia that the culture really, we were swimming in.
It was the culture.
It was the culture. You could see the Inquirer. Are they gay or not? Now it's like, oh, this person's gay. Who cares? It's not even it's not even really a thing anymore. I don't perceive it to be a thing anymore.
And it's so important to develop a strong foundation, especially here coming in, and now I consider myself a Floridian, but developing a foundation here. I've known several people or have been acquainted with people who've left the United States.
Right.
Because they just felt that they could not stay here.
Right. So, I mean, like I said, the event is going to be, really focused on the young leaders, and it's going to be really great to hear what their thoughts are on, where they want to take the community and how they're going to lead us into the future.
I'm excited.
Which is really, really a great thing to see. So, Queer News Tonight looks forward to seeing you at the Save LGBTQ Sunset Mixer on July 25th. That is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight. Let's welcome anchor Glen Evelyn, a former organizational consultant who followed his passion for storytelling. He has recently created Our Family Pride and is now writing his book, Why the F Not, and will soon star in upcoming South Florida film Override. Glen, you recently completed the first series of Our Family Pride. Tell me, what's happening out?
Thanks, Rex. Our Family Pride is a heartfelt story about a family that finds out that their dad's gay. And it really is about watching him for the first time come out late in life and the family dealing with it while dealing with their own issues. And it's resonated so much across our community, especially there are so many people that are coming out for the first time. So I wrote this in order to give people voice, to make sure that people coming out late in life, they have something to turn to and say, you want to understand why, watch this show. So I'm really proud of it.
No, and you have a star-studded cast, I've heard, which is really amazing. And I find it interesting because you said, people coming out later in life, but also that it's their dad. I actually have a similar experience. One of my first boyfriends, his father came out after we started dating, and it devastated his mother. So, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how those dynamics play out in your show.
And that's a lot of the show too. There is that dynamic of what happens between the husband and wife when she finds out he's gay, and also what happens to the kids. So there are 3 kids in the movie. The oldest one has a drug problem, battling drug. He's out gay, and here his father denied him all these years because he was hiding this truth. And the middle daughter thinks her boyfriend's gay and he's not. And the youngest daughter wants to be non-binary because she doesn't know what she wants to be. So it covers a lot of bases.
I can't wait. It sounds amazing. And it actually resonates a lot with my former life and former lives of people that I know. So Queer News Tonight looks forward to watching the first season of Our Family Pride. That is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.
And of course, let's welcome tonight's lead anchor, Rex Rogosch. Rex is a visionary designer with over 30 years of experience in product design, interior design, and architecture, also known in the drag community as International Lords. Rex recently returned to performing as president and co-founder of Lentera. He champions mental health awareness through vibrant, inclusive events. Rex, Fort Lauderdale walk to the runway on July 25th. Tell me, what's happening out?
Absolutely, Larry. On Friday, July 25th, fashion lovers will flock to Art Serve on East Sunrise Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale for Walk the Runway, showcasing local fashion designers. The event will kick off at 5:30 p.m. and run until 8 p.m., offering an exciting glimpse into South Florida's vibrant fashion scene. Organized by Art Serve, this free-to-attend evening will feature stunning runway presentations from emerging local designers. Attendees will discover bold trends, fresh styles, and one-of-a-kind creations, all under one roof. Those wishing to participate or showcase can email curatorial@artserve.org for more details. With fashion, flair, and a dash of fabulous, this event promises to be unforgettable. Well, as someone, as you can tell, is not afraid of fashion and being daring, I cannot wait. I will be running there in my heels and will be front row. I love the fact that, we're seeing a lot of different organizations bring to the forefront things that we might not think about. There's so many people in our community, that we have such a diverse community here in South Florida, and this is just one other example of other people and things that are happening. And fashion is something that most people don't think about. We just go into some people just go into the closet, pull out what looks comfortable and put it on. But, this is a really great opportunity to be unique and be a little daring and step outside the closet and show maybe a different side of yourself.
I agree. I absolutely love clothes. I live in a tiny studio, and half of my studio is clothing that I've picked up from flea markets. Well, they're all clean. I make sure that they're all washed so they don't have fleas on them, but I get them at flea markets, thrift stores, you name it. I am constantly rotating out my clothing. I was in Mexico recently. I may or may not have purchased 15 of these shirts in every different color combination possible.
If it fits, buy it in every color.
I just thought, this is going to be my new signature look. So I absolutely love fashion. You will see me there. For
Good.
Sure.
We'll both have front row seats.
Very good. Very good.
I was just going to say, it's great to also support up and coming people in our community and design just the way we would do in the entertainment world locally. And
Absolutely. Yeah, the arts are definitely something we all should definitely support on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And Rex, you're going to have to shake off a pair of your heels for me, because I don't.
Not a problem.
I'm not super fashionable. So.
Let me grab one out of my closet just for you. It doesn't matter. I'll make it fit. Well, Queer News Tonight looks forward to seeing you at Walk the Runway on July 25th. That is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight. Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Rex Rogosch, and let's queer up South Florida and Florida. Third vandalism hits South Florida Rainbow Crosswalk. In Delray Beach, Florida, police are investigating yet another act of vandalism at a prominent LGBTQ pride mural. The third attack since the intersection was first painted in 2021. Security footage released by Delray Beach Police shows a black pickup truck deliberately performing burnouts on the rainbow-painted intersection at Northeast 1st Street and 2nd Avenue. The driver is seen returning to the intersection not once, but twice on June 17th, leaving dark tire marks across the Pride mural. The act occurred squarely in the middle of Pride Month. Officers say the vehicle's license plate was not clearly visible in the footage, and they are still working to identify the driver. The first attack ever was on the very day it was unveiled in 2021. Alexander Jarek was arrested for similar damage and later ordered to pay $7,000 in restitution. In February 2024, Dylan Brewer faced the same consequences for another act of vandalism. The timing is also notable. The incident came just days before Atlanta police charged 4 people with hate crimes for cutting up rainbow flags at another rainbow intersection. It also happened just weeks before U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy publicly attacked rainbow crosswalks, calling them distractions to drivers. Advocates are calling on authorities to treat these repeated attacks as hate crimes and not just property damage. As the investigation continues, the LGBTQ community in Florida hopes for stronger protections for public pride art and for queer visibility in shared spaces. I mean, the comments at the national level that are coming down from the transportation, about rainbow crosswalks are dangerous, they distract drivers. I mean, one, it actually makes people slow down. I mean, there's like things that crosswalks are supposed to do. They're supposed to make people slow down, make people stop. So they're not a distraction. They're actually a safety. Most crosswalks need to be more visible in general. So this is even more proof that they are not a distraction. When we're putting blinking bright up lights on crosswalks. That can't be any more distracting than rainbow. So it's not at all about the distracting drivers. It's about them, throwing out yet another thing, going, oh, rainbow this, rainbow that, and just another way to kind of distract from what's really going on.
They're just trying to justify their hate for LGBTQ plus people. It's just another way for them to justify their exclusion of Americans, of people that they disagree with, people that they're taught to hate, people that they see, they're probably secretly gay themselves. There are so many in the closet people, we've talked about this before. There are people out there that they have such an intense hatred and distaste for gay people because they secretly are themselves. And this is the reason why Florida can't have nice things, because, we put beautiful things out there like a crosswalk, and people want to do burnouts on it. It's really shameful. I think I saw in the news that these are young men. These are young men that need to be educated. These are young men that need to be in school. They need to be working. They need to be contributing to society. But instead, they're doing these crazy things on public roads. I mean, they have nothing better to do with their time than to just do crazy stunts on crosswalks. I mean, it's the definition of the sickness that's happening in this country.
I often wonder, though, you bring up a good point. I've had conversations with people who, if I'm just sitting there and not typically looking gay, they treat me one way until I do say gay. So I often wonder if, you say that they, it's distracting. They're trying to distract from people that they hate, right? And I don't think I have to wonder if it's not the person they hate. It's the fact that they're being told they need to talk about hating gays, or they because you said they're closetedly, they're probably closet cases, which is probably the case too. So it's not the fact that they hate gays. It's the fact that they're trying to deflect from themselves so that they can't be clocked themselves, or something else that is glaringly obvious about them that is even a bigger subject. So they're going to say, oh, gay, gay, gay. So it's more about deflection for the general public. And you also bring up a good point. That it's typically younger people doing these destructive, burnouts and whatnot. And all I see is a small child who wants attention.
And I think they're trying to score points in their community. They want to be able to tell their friends or their church community or their hate group that they're
bros.
They're bros. They want to be able to say, yeah, bro, look what I did. It's on the news tonight. Check out Channel 10 or Channel 4, whatever. You're going to see I did this thing at that crosswalk. Those gay people, ha ha ha.
Right.
They think it's so funny, but really they're the ones that look really ignorant. They're the ones that look really destructive. Educated people don't think that they're heroes. They think that they're really hateful.
Well, I think regardless of the intention of whatever they did it, I think the not being tolerant of it is so important.
Agreed.
To consider it as a hate crime, that it's important for our communities to stick together. The fact that Del Rey would create this crosswalk to create unity and normalize, that LGBTQ is part of society today. I think it's really important for us to take a stand and make sure that people understand that it is a hate crime, and whether they mean it to be or not. Because what it does condone for other people who have those tendencies to act out. And if we, someone said something to me really, that always stuck with me. It's not okay not to be racist or prejudiced. You have to be anti-racist or prejudiced, because if you're not taking a stand, if you're not stepping up, then nothing else, no one grows, nothing else happens.
I agree with what you're saying. At the bigger level, I have to wonder though, when you put out such a big LGBTQ sign like a crosswalk, a beautiful crosswalk like that, I have to wonder though, are you inviting that kind of hatred and bigotry and vandalism and destruction? Did they not think that was going to happen, especially in the climate in which we're living in? I'm not saying that it makes it right, and I'm not saying that it's correct to do those things, I just have to ask myself, could they have put something on there, a finish or a sheen or something that would have prevented the burn? Something, because, there are so many hateful people in Florida. We are the epicenter for Trump. He lives 45 miles north of here. This is the MAGA country that, people are living in. This is the epicenter of that. So
I applaud, Delray Beach for doing what they did. I also have to say, there's been pushback, or propositions to enforce not allowing communities to fly our flag in the communities and impact, funding. So I think it's important we keep doing what we're doing. I would say certainly there's a big expense. I'm very involved in my community government, so I know there's an expense, but I hope that Delray Beach adjusts or can supplement their security cameras. It's a big topic that we look at here in Fort Lauderdale and Wilton Manors. I'm very much involved in some initiatives there. And, when you see things on our news, aside from this, where something tragic happens with a vehicle or destruction, in this case, vandalism, that, it seems that too often license plates aren't read, and it's sort of like right out there. And I know that, there may be a lack of funding. Maybe people are dragging their feet and they're saying, well, I'm not going to approve a cost, because it can cost tens of thousands of dollars to probably put up one security camera.
I just, it's hard for me because running, going slow through a red light, and that camera caught my license plate. If you're going to do a LGBTQ walkway, you need to expect that. Yeah. But I do think, to your point, is inviting. I think we need to continue to push for these things because it will normalize, in our society that these things are a part of who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think two things can be true at once. I think we need to normalize the fact that we're here, we exist, we're not going anywhere. And also at the same time know that they're not going anywhere either. And know that you're going to invite these crazy people out of the woodwork when you show your pride. And to know that, okay, we can't put an extra layer of paint down, of clear paint that's going to prevent these burnouts on the road, then put extra security camera that's going to be able to read license plates if you destroy the property, something that's going to protect that.
The most amazing thing is 20 years ago, you'd never see the sidewalk anywhere.
No.
But now you do, yeah.
And today, we have these opportunities. And I think, again, it's so important for us to defend them and to really make sure that we see these for what they are. I mean, right in the middle of Pride, it's, they're definitely taking a shot. And it is a hate crime. So hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, Pride's just not a month, it's all year long. And, like they used to say, do the crime, do the time. So, we hope that they, get caught and their actions get the right consequences.
Absolutely.
And that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There's no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.
Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Larry Farver, and let's queer up the worldview. UK judge bans uniformed police from marching with pride flag, sparking LGBTQ backlash. Well, just days before this weekend's Pride in Northern England, a court ruling in Northumbria has ignited outrage across the queer community. In a controversial decision, British Judge Mr. Justice Linden ruled that uniformed police officers who marched under the Progress Pride flag at last year's parade breached their duty of impartiality. The judge sided with a female event participant, Lindsay Smith, who claimed the officer's presence and the display of pride imagery, including a rainbow-colored police van, threatened her safety and showed support for gender ideology. Linden stated, quote, "The fact that they wore their uniforms, marched as a contingent, and carried the police pride and other flags demonstrated their support for the cause as police officers," end quote, adding that this implied bias against those with gender-critical views. Quote, "It's not hard to imagine circumstances in which officers questioned might be called on to deal with a clash between gender-critical people and supporters of gender ideology, and therefore situations where the former has cause for concern as whether they were being dealt with impartiality, end quote. Critics of the decision say it's laced with bias itself and could roll back years of progress in police and LGBTQ community trust. In response, Northumbria police said that the priority last year was to keep people safe and added that marching in Pride gave them a chance to engage with people, including those who may have less confidence in policing. The department hasn't yet confirmed if officers will participate in this weekend's Pride. Well, having come from many, many years of going to New York Pride parades in my coming out process and really up until I came down to South Florida, I think it's important to engage. Certainly some people may take issue with uniformed officers, whether you're in the police department or firemen or, those types of things. But I know that there were many contingents wearing T-shirts, carrying banners, floats. I think it's important that there be trust and rebuilt between the police. I know that there are people in our community who strongly disagree. I've been on, past panels where people have argued that something as simple as maybe the security they have at Stonewall Pride in Wilton Manors is overdone. I beg to disagree. I'd rather be safe. We're fortunate in our local communities in Fort Lauderdale and Wilton Manors, for example, to have governments and leadership that engage not only our community, but other communities as well. So what are your thoughts?
Ooh, I will tell you, yesterday, one of my friends told me the story about these police that were targeting LGBTQ, and they actually got busted later in many years. And all I can think about is the police are part of our society. The trust is critical. For them to participate and to recognize our groups and in a favorable way does build trust. It does build, community. And it also lets the community know that, they're, looking out for people generally. The fact that they're dressed in LGBTQ rainbows doesn't make them ineffective in terms of defending the law. So, I think, again, it's an excuse for someone to take a shot at the LGBT community because I think it's a step in the right way to have them participate the way they do. So I find it the ruling offensive, and I'm sorry it happened. And hopefully we'll be able to move past that.
I want to know who it says that she was an event participant.
I was going to ask
Right.
the same question.
Was she an event participant? So that I don't know how British common law works necessarily, but was she an event participant so that way she would have standing in order to bring a premeditated court case to the judge?
Right.
Does that make sense?
But she was a participant at Pride.
So she would, or maybe she was like one of those people where she's like a lesbian that doesn't like transgendered people, or.
I had the same question, but
Right.
we have to look at at police in general. I mean, for decades they've been, marginalized people have always hated police. I mean, the police were there at Stonewall. Black Lives Matter. So police in general have a lot of ground to cover when you talking about gaining trust. And there are thousands of studies out there that show that a very small pride flag in the window of a store or as a lapel pin or even a pocket square can make that other person feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
And so while I understand, having background with people in the military where they're not allowed to do things in uniform, so while I understand where the sentiment is coming from, where people need to feel that the people of law are non-partial. Unfortunately, we know that our government's not non-partial, so why would anything else be? However, as a queer community, seeing the police, the fire, the Army, the Navy, Air Force, Marines, all of them there in support, at least we know that there is a small faction of the larger system that we have been riling up against that is in support of us. And if I've run across police officers that had a small pride pin on their outfit, and right then my guard came down. I knew that I was talking to somebody that I could trust. And so, I also question this Lindsay woman. Like, if she was a participant, why would she feel unsafe if she was at the very event? If she's straight, why is she at Pride? And then why is all of a sudden she feel unsafe? She should feel unsafe about the queens that are in the sidelines more than the police officers marching, because those queens will turn on her quicker than anybody else. I mean, honestly. So I had the same question. But we hope and pray that everybody is always safe and can trust the law enforcement around them, because they are there to serve and protect.
I got to tell you too, I mean, police have had such a hard run. It's the hardest job in the world. And people automatically profile against the police.
Well, because there's been some bad apples.
Well, there have been bad apples, but, generally speaking, there are a lot of great people who are upholding the law and making a better community, protecting us. And for them to be a part of the community, it also is better for them.
And that's why they need to be part of the community, to show that.
Exactly.
I think, I'm not going to comment on that aspect of it necessarily, but to talk about this point is to say that, I think the gay rights movement is really starting to branch off into, we have like a gender movement, as well as we have the kind of older gay rights movement, and it's kind of diverging and not converging, if that makes sense. And I think from what I was hearing in the complaint was that they were talking about gender ideology. It didn't talk about sexual orientation, and I think people are very afraid of this non-binary, gender non-conforming, things that, talk about gender. I think that's the new frontier when it comes to gay rights and gay liberation, and I think we're going to see where that leads us, just in terms of where the movement goes, and I think that we're experiencing that backlash right now. I think the haters are always going to hate everything related to LGBTQ plus people. I think right now they've kind of laid off people that are attracted to people of the same gender. And I think what they're doing is they're focusing their spotlight now on people that are gender nonconforming, people that are non-binary, people that are transgendered, because that's the new target in the community. And I think that's what's happening.
And those are the ones that need to really see the law enforcement on their side, because trans people are being targeted, non-binary. And so I think their presence at the parades are even more critical in a more friendly, not just standing at our gates and standing on the sidelines, but actually being in the parade and showing that they are there with us.
I agree.
So that is our big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.
Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Larry Farver, and let's queer up gay culture. Gay Jake the Rizzbot struts through West Hollywood. A 4-foot-tall gay robot rocking rainbow armbands, I can't talk today, a tutu, and a cowboy hat has taken the streets of West Hollywood by storm, and LGBTQ Angelinos are living for it. Dubbed Jake the Rizzbot, the humanoid android was seen vibing through Santa Monica Boulevard, decked out in Pride Progress flags, and even a cheeky sticker reading, "Not Elon's, bitch." Clips show the robot flirting with onlookers, asking, "Can I take you out for dinner?" before playing the iconic sax riff from George Michael's Careless Whisper in one viral clip. It zips through crowds, tossing playful insults and smooth pickup lines with equal flair. The robot is a G1 humanoid agent created by Chinese tech company Unitree Robotics and valued at $16,000. While it uses AI to interact, it isn't autonomous. It's remotely controlled by someone nearby. Unitree says the bot's features include dexterous hands and reinforcement learning. Battery life is around 2 hours, enough for a fierce catwalk through WeHo. But not everyone's a fan. Far-right voices, what a surprise, have condemned the robot as part of a so-called woke agenda, with one user asking, "Great, what's next, a trans robot?" We do not know who dressed up the droid or why they made it tour Los Angeles and Austin, but one thing's certain, he's serving looks and pride, and we love it. Well, I have to say, when are we going to get ours in Wilton Manors
Right?
in Fort Lauderdale? Damn it!
I think
I feel left out.
I feel like I would have a lot more luck on a date
Yeah.
with that robot than
Yeah.
some of the men in Wilton.
I got to tell you,
Yeah.
I've seen him dance, and I want to learn some moves.
Yeah,
would
It's
be
amazing.
yeah.
Amazing.
Well, it's interesting how AI and robotics are really coming on the scene. Without trying on social media, I had some things pop up, and they're just talking about these AI boyfriends that are popping up all over the place.
I want an AI boyfriend.
That will just do whatever and
That's what I
say
want.
whatever you want.
That's
And
what I want.
so, what are your thoughts, Guy?
I mean, look, it's in WeHo. Let's have some fun. Let's
Yes.
not take ourselves so seriously.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, we all love to have attention thrown on us. So who cares where we get the attention from? It's a little AI bot who's saying, "Hey, you look fabulous, and let's go on a date." Why not? Let's ignore the haters and ignore the people, because there's always going to be somebody who says something negative about everything out there. There's grumpy cats everywhere. So it really doesn't matter. I love the fact that we have a little bit of sunshine and, again, a little bit of positive distraction from all the other craziness that's going around.
And I love his name, or I don't want to misgender. Does the robot have a? Well, let's his name. The robot's name.
Their name?
Their name. Yes. Their name. It's a Rizzbot, which the kids these days, Riz means charisma.
Oh.
So it has a lot of charisma, and I could tell. I love the outfit. It was very It had a lot of Riz.
So I can say that to the intern at my job. You have a lot of Riz.
I
won't
don't know how comfortable they'll be hearing that, but yeah, you could. It would be, you could use it that way for sure.
Well, I'm ready for the Vogoffs and the Crosswalk.
Well, it's interesting. This robot has been all over the country. They've been
Wow.
appearing everywhere, but it got more attention in WeHo than anywhere else. And
So you knew about this?
yeah,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's all over the place, and it got so much attention. So it's great marketing, and
Absolutely.
yeah, again, some dance
For the
moves.
gay agenda.
I'm surprised we're not, people aren't screaming about the fact that it's from China.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and the fact that it's a gay robot.
Thank you.
So again,
Sure, they are somewhere. Yeah.
so that is our big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight. Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Rex Rogosch, and let's queer up trans rights. New study reveals shocking results on the trans community over Donald Trump. Even before any executive orders were signed in January, our court rulings delivered, fear was already spreading fast through transgender communities across the U.S. Now, a new study from the University of Vermont, published in JAMA Network Open, has confirmed just how deep the fears run. The study, titled Access to Gender-Affirming Care and Alternatives to That Care Among Transgender Adults, surveyed 489 transgender, non-binary, and intersex people. Every single respondent said they believed they could lose access to gender-affirming care under the changing political climate, especially under Donald Trump. The survey was conducted between the 2024 election and Inauguration Day in 2025. More than 1 in 5 participants, over 21%, said they would feel suicidal if they lost access to gender-affirming care. Author Teresa Graziano recalled one respondent who said, quote, "Killing myself is easier than living without my hormones and my gender-affirming care," end quote. Even more troubling, nearly a third said they would turn to black market hormones or try to make their own at home if medical options disappeared. While there's no federal ban yet on adult access to care, the Supreme Court's recent decision in Schmedy upholding Tennessee's ban on care for minors has only increased fears that more states will follow suit. Advocates nationwide say the Vermont study mirrors broader realities. A spokesperson from Advocates for Trans Equality told The Advocate, quote, "Trump's policies have consequences. All of us are less healthy and less safe, and many trans people will die without transition-related care they need," end quote. Representative Becca Ballant, Vermont's first out lesbian member of Congress, said, quote, "The data mirrors what I am hearing directly from trans, non-binary, gender non-conforming folks, intersex people in Vermont and their families," end quote. She is shocked that the statistics show over 20% would consider taking their own lives, but said it isn't surprising given the political messaging over the past 2 years. Balint draws a powerful parallel between transgender healthcare access and reproductive freedom, saying, quote, "It's the same thing. You're talking about people having control over their own bodies," end quote. For many in the trans community, the message is clear. Their lives, health, and future are on the line. This story, I can't even put into words. It's heartbreaking. As many of you know, I founded a nonprofit for mental health and mental health advocacy. And to hear that people would rather take their lives than lose affirming care is unimaginable and unfathomable. And the quote in there that we are talking about people having control over their own bodies is, I think, the crucial part there. You know, the government is stepping in and saying what you can and can't do to your body. So first it was reproductive rights, and now it's gender affirming care. You know, what is next? And it's sad to me that as a community at large, just not the LGBT community, but as a community at large, as the United States of America, we are allowing this to happen. We are allowing our neighbors, our family members to be minimalized and marginalized and put in a position that they are actually thinking about taking their own lives because they can't live their authentic true self.
It's horrible. And the other thing that you hear is that they're taking it in their own hands. They're doing stuff on the black market, and that's only going to perpetuate, healthcare costs and challenges and complications. So it's only going to put more stress on an already stressed out healthcare system. But to your point, just coming out as a gay man, the journey it takes, to be able to accept yourself. I couldn't imagine being a man who wants to be or needs to be a woman and not being able to become my true self, or to stop treatment in the middle of treatment. So it doesn't surprise me that 1 out of 5 people are considering taking their lives. And we need to really hear that.
Yes, and it's very real. As someone who works, creatively outside my 9-to-5 job with people in the trans community, recently had an experience where someone had not used the healthcare system in probably 10 or 15 years. And luckily I used some resources, but sometimes, there's old experiences, and that's what this person, she was haunted by. And I reassured her, I sent her some links, one of our advocates that we very much celebrate with some of our anchors here, Holy Cross, was that resource for her, but many years ago had a different experience. So it's very, very important. I also have to ask the question, with the government trying to infringe on, our freedoms, especially in the trans community, you look at people who are born intersex. How are they going to deal with that? There was a time in the 50s and 60s where people just made decisions for people, and it wasn't allowed to be that person's choice ultimately when they came of age. So there's a lot to discuss on that as well.
I think there's always been marginalized communities that have not been able to access healthcare and who have taken it in their own hands to access on the streets these hormones, injections, things that maybe feminize their appearance, that have had detrimental effects to their health. They're in our community here in South Florida. We have some transgender elders that speak to the community. And they've talked a lot about their experience with some of these substances on the street that promised to do one thing and perhaps did another to their health. And, it's very scary. I think that gender affirming care is going to stop for the people that absolutely need it as a lifeline? No, because they're going to access it through illegal channels.
Or they're going to commit suicide.
I think that the will to survive is very strong, and I think that people are going to access it how they're going to access it.
Well, there's a black market for everything.
There is.
There are people who I know go out of our country for less expensive dental care, and it might be not necessarily what we're talking about, but because it's more accessible financially, in these times. And, but there's no regulation.
Yeah, I think what's happening is an absolute shame that, the party of small government is, the party of small government when it comes to millionaires and billionaires. They want to completely take their hands off of a millionaire's bank account, but they want to completely put their hands on a woman's reproductive choices, on a person's right to choose how they want to express their gender, their sexuality. It's really scary times that we're living in. I would recommend that everybody check out, The Handmaid's Tale. It's really not that, it seems like it seems like a fabrication, but, I believe it was Margaret Atwood who wrote that. She said that nothing that she put in that book, I believe it was a series of books actually, she said nothing that she wrote was taken from her imagination. Everything that was written in there was based on something that came from from historical events that had happened previously.
Well, I would like to believe that the will to survive is more prevalent. Unfortunately, going to the black market, I have some close friends who are trans elders, and they were part of that situation where they were injecting silicone and those types of things into their body, and they're having major health repercussions in their older age now. But unfortunately, as someone who is a suicide survivor and has attempted suicide and been hospitalized for it, sometimes despair and the fact that, especially our trans community feels so marginalized, and we've talked about, they're afraid to go to doctors because they don't know how they're going to be treated.
Sure.
They're afraid to go outside because they don't know how they're going to be treated. They're afraid of the cops, and they're afraid of government. So, when your back is up against the wall, sometimes, unfortunately, the black market isn't your answer.
Or you can't afford it.
Or you can't afford it, or you have to do illegal things to get it. And this is also putting our healthcare system in a quandary because they take a Hippocratic oath. But now doctors are like, I want to treat you. I need to treat you. You need to be treated. But unfortunately, I could get sued. The hospital could get closed just by me acting on it. So now you're putting, not only the life of that person who needs the help in danger, you're now putting a system in danger that's helping hundreds of thousands of millions of other people.
Yeah.
So it is this slippery slope. We've talked about it before on this program. When we were talking about the gender affirming care for youth, and I happen to be part of that. And I said the same thing then. I said this is going to be a slippery slope because there are people who need gender affirming care because it's medically needed. It's not because somebody came to them and said, you know what, I'm electing to do this. Sometimes it's needed. You were talking about intersex people. So there's so many facets of this that need to be talked about and explored, and it's not a black and white answer. The only black and white answer is that the government should not be telling us what we should be doing with our body.
I agree.
End story.
Totally agreed.
And if you are somebody watching this and you are in a situation where you feel hopeless or helpless, please pick up the phone and call. And if you don't know who to call, dial 988. And that is our big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight.
Now let's dive deep into this big LGBTQ story for today. I'm Larry Farver, and let's queer up gay culture. Retro and revealing. Vintage swimwear ads show men have always served summer. Hot Girl Summer might be 2025's rallying cry, but decades before hashtags and online shops, hot men's swimwear ads were already bringing in the heat, and they were likely every gay boy's fantasy. Queerty curated a collection of 25 vintage swimsuit ads from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, which proves one thing loud and clear. Skin has always been in style. And long before your favorite Insta thirst trap, these illustrated spreads show that men have always been pinups in their own right. Back then, choosing a swimsuit wasn't about scrolling on your phone. It was about spotting bold new designs and equally bold magazine spreads. As men started going shirtless on America's beaches in the 1930s, Fashion exploded with variety, from high-waisted trunks with buttons and belts to the so-called daredevil side lacers that left very little to the imagination. Speedo was already dominating with its now iconic briefs. Catalina called itself the most popular swim trunks in America, while Jansen dazzled with the most daring designs of the era. One thing's for sure, vintage men's swimwear was never shy and never boring, and honestly, some of those daredevil trunks are still hotter than anything we've seen on Fire Island this year. So before you get ready for your next beach day, dive into these vintage ads. They're a reminder that queer style, summer confidence, and body pride aren't trends, they're timeless. Check out more of these vintage styles on queerty.com. Well, I can hardly wait. But it's great that they finally took off their shirts in the 30s. My Lord.
It's finally that we're equally objectified.
Yes.
I mean, it's funny that we talk about, you said finally in the 30s, coming out of the Victoria era, and, everybody was wearing suits basically at the beach. I'm like, you're at the beach, soak up the sun, right? But I also like the fact that this talks about body positivity, because, that is something that we talk about, especially in the LGBTQ community. Everyone's trying to be the perfect body, the perfect this, the perfect that. I firmly believe that fashion should be an extension of your personality. And don't be shy about it. If somebody says, what is he wearing? I can't tell you how many times I've been asked, is it your birthday? No, I like wearing crowns. My name is Rex. It means king. Get with it. And so I love this, and I love the fact that they're showing a retrospective, because it really does show that, it has been there. It might not have been always in our face, but it was always there as a subtle, and, it was definitely softcore porn for most people who were just coming out of the closet back in the day. Yeah. And, it's still, going to the beach, what's the first thing we do? We look to see who's around and what they're wearing. Well, that is a big LGBTQ story for today. There is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by subscribing and sharing Queer News Tonight. And those are today's queer headlines from Queer News Tonight. These anchors represent the best of our LGBTQ community. If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Join the conversation on your favorite streaming platform. Queer News Tonight is the only live and LGBTQ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines.
We need your support. If our community is to grow and then thrive, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ stories in motion and in sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Rex Rogosch, and on behalf of these LGBTQ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Larry Farver, Robert Hadley, Brian Bender, and Glen Evelyn, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. To our LGBTQ world, we hope you will join us by embracing love, generosity, bravery, be transformative, and queer. Good night.
Good night.